Hey everybody, and welcome to this week's video. Today I'm going to be talking about how to keep kids, and for that matter adults, motivated when it comes to practice. I know practicing can sound like a drag, and I try to convince as many of my students that practicing is not only fun because you should be enjoying it anyway because you're actually playing, but what it could lead to where you could actually really enjoy your instrument is priceless. Because if you struggle on the same, let's say in this case, if you're learning how to play guitar, if you're struggling on the same basic things where it's just like how to switch chords quickly or playing a simple scale, if you're on that for too long, it can just be like that, just a chore, and you're like, when is this going to change? So what I've noticed over the years, the best way to practice, even for myself, is to keep it in small increments of time and then switch what you're practicing. For instance, if you're going to block, let's say 15-20 minutes a day to practice, right? Which is, for a young kid, that's ideal, that's great. If you can get your kid to practice that much, that's awesome. So you want to do the first 5 minutes something technical, maybe like a simple scale, and just go a simple pentatonic scale, and you set the timer on your phone. You just set it right next to your kid that's practicing, set a timer, the buzzer goes off, 5 minutes of that. You'd be amazed how quickly 5 minutes goes by. Then you switch to something else. Then you do chord changes. You do whatever song you're working on, you practice, and you try it again. Same thing, you set a timer, and you count down to 5 minutes. Boom, that'll be over in no time. What happens when you do it in small snippets like that, not only does it go by faster, but you actually make sure that in each practice session, you get through all the technique that you need to do, because it happens all the time. I'll have students that they're like, I practiced an hour yesterday, but they'll only practice that one thing. So then when we go to read notes or do finger picking, and again, in the case of guitar, they're like, oh, I didn't do that at all. So then it takes such a longer amount of time to learn all the skills. So I like to make sure I'm learning each and every skill to become a well-balanced musician and break it up into small snippets. Then again, if it's a guitar, you can break down to finger picking, another 5 minutes. That's the song of Hallelujah. So you practice, let's say, finger picking with that. If it's the piano, 5 minutes of scales, 5 minutes of chord changes, 5 minutes of sight reading. There's so many free apps that teach you how to sight read, where you can just look at a treble clef and know what note it is. Again, keep them in small chunks, repetitive every day, and just make yourself a list. In fact, I'm including a list of what are good starting points to practice chords, to practice scales, to practice songs, with the timer again. So I'll leave that in the link below. So again, very simple. Keep it simple, keep it varied, keep it exciting, and then of course, the end of the practice, the big chunk of time, if you have an extra 5 or 10 minutes, then you can work on your songs. Then you can work on, if you're working on, again, like Hallelujah, or if you're working on a classical piece or anything like that, then you can reserve a nice chunk of time so you end with actual music, pieces, songs, tunes that you're working on. If you start with the song, if you start with the pieces that you're working on, then it gets really hard to transition from that into technical things like scales and stuff like that. So again, start with the technique, and then you'll be looking forward to working on the song. And this goes for everybody, not just kids, like I said in the beginning of the video. This goes for adults, for us too. I have to keep my practice varied too, whether I'm practicing the piano or the guitar or drums or whatever it may be. I like to split it up to keep it exciting. So very simple. I promise it'll work. It'll keep your kids motivated. And the number one tip I could say is, if you're learning an instrument, practice together. Ask your kid to explain what he's learning. You'd be amazed at, like, not only that it's a great time to spend with your kids, but with them explaining what they just learned in their lesson, it solidifies what they're learning. So that works wonders for making it go into long-term memory. So again, very simple. Enjoy that. Click below. You can join us anytime at Color Me Mozart on YouTube, or Color Me Mozart Kids on Instagram. And stay tuned, because now we're going to be answering questions that you guys sent in this next segment. In this segment, we'll be doing question and answer, and this week's question comes from Faith and Family Farmhouse on Instagram. They asked, is there a best age to start teaching a child to play an instrument? And I know this is definitely a topic of debate that we can have a varying opinion on, and there's definitely not a correct answer. But I'll tell you my experience. When parents ask me, is my son or daughter too young to start playing? They could be 3 or 7. My answer is always this: there really is no perfect age The however is, what is worth it is to try a couple of lessons. Like you would anything else, you know, like just have them take a couple lessons in piano or guitar, drums, anything like that, and just see if they take to it. Let's say your child is 4. If they seem like they're having fun, then try another one. Also, you want to make sure that the lessons are really short, because at that age, you really can't focus for that long. So you don't want to do like an hour lesson for a 4-year-old. That's not going to work. They're almost definitely not going to have a great time, because they're going to, by the 20th minute, they're going to be like, oh, how long is this lesson? So if you want the best chance, I would say keep the lesson really short. I recommend 15 to 20 minutes if you're 3, 4, even 5. And then you can see, I always tell parents, I'd rather have a student that's young ask, like, oh, why can't we do more, than say, oh, why does the lesson have to be so long? And then you try it. If you notice they're not really reacting to it in a positive manner, then you could try again in 6 months or the following year. But that's my recommendation. Start them as young as possible, because why not? You know, they might love it. It might be one of those cases where they take to it just like they would a sport or anything else like that. So I think music is such a beautiful thing. Give it a shot, try it. And one last thing is, as a parent, you can learn it too. So just make sure you make it an activity that you do together with your kids, not that you just shove them and like, oh, go take a lesson and it's not part of my life. Make it a family affair, and I promise you won't regret it. Thanks again for sending that. That was a really good question. I'd be excited to hear what you guys think about the experiences that you've had, and so other people can benefit from your experience as well. We'll be here next week again. Remember to join us on Instagram at Color Me Mozart Kids and on YouTube at Color Me Mozart, and we'll see you again. Bye.